living in the new world.
Welcome back in, everyone, to the New World Old Soul podcast, where I'm joined by my lovely wife, Melissa, and you look beautiful as always. I'm not saying anything about anything at all today. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to fall into the trap of this weekly roundup where we look. Now I'm starting to do it. See,
You're doing
setting
it.
the trap. I'm doing
You're not
it.
even looking at my eyes
I'm
again.
already doing it. Before we jump into today's conversation, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And yeah, I'm not going to do it.
Okay.
I'm not going there.
I think I'm going to go there.
What do you mean?
So we were having a heated discussion this morning about Jeremy's weight. I have gotten several messages, which he claims, no, I haven't.
Are you turning the tables on me right now? Is that what's happening?
I have gotten several messages this week asking if you are okay,
I'm fine.
why you look so skinny.
I don't know.
Yes, you do. You do know.
No, I mean, I guess I appreciate it. Melissa does not like it. Melissa's now shouting at me because I've been on this ketovore diet to where I fast daily,
And then devour steaks in front of the rest
and
of
then
us.
I eat a lot of meat
Steak.
throughout my day. My diet consists primarily of meat currently, and I've been feeling great. And some of you have noticed. You apparently are asking questions about my appearance. I am down 11 pounds
That's it.
through the month of January because I started this for New Year's and I took a couple breaks. One for Eli's birthday. I really just that whole trip. I kind of stepped away from it, put on a couple pounds, and then came back, dialed in once
I
again with the
too
diet.
Put on a couple pounds.
You've put on more than a couple pounds, Mama. But no, I'm fine. I appreciate the concern for those of you who maybe are concerned. Melissa absolutely hates it, however.
Yeah. Well, I've said this before that I prefer you a little,
Chunky,
just a little, I like a little something to hold on to.
little rotund.
So Jeremy has a goal of becoming 160 pounds. I say he's skinny enough. That's too thin because he has like this tiny little like bit on his back and he's like, I have to get rid of that. But the thing is you're not 20 years old anymore. Like you used to be able to lean down in that way. But as we get older, Jeremy, we store a little bit of extra weight in things like our love handles. So if you get so skinny that you get rid of something that is kind of a natural fat storage area in your 40s, the rest of you is going to become so thin.
Melissa, is this even about me right now?
This is about me.
I was going to say, are you a little frustrated at the situation?
I haven't put on that much weight yet. I tend to slap it on at the end. But what I'm saying is you give me constant crap about being too skinny. You're always like, you're too skinny. And then when I'm like, no.
Not while pregnant.
No,
Just
not while
Make sure
pregnant.
we're all on the same page here.
No, I'll beefcake it up for that. But like I do get thin when I nurse and when I have young kids and stuff, I get really, really thin.
Yeah.
You were giving me a bunch of crap about that. I did put on weight and then you were like, keep going, keep putting a weight on. And I was like, I don't really want to put on more weight. Like, I feel like I'm good. And you're like, well, you should care what I think because I'm your husband and I'm the one that has to look at you.
Okay, here's how I'm going to flip this back on you now. I'm going to say it's more so about health. I think you reached a point, like when we first moved here to Idaho from Washington State, you were extremely skinny.
Yeah.
You had young kids. You just maybe weren't eating as much. We were highly
So
stressed at the time. We were so busy, and you got down to what, like 100 pounds?
I was like 95 pounds when we moved
Okay,
here.
so it became
I'm also 5 feet tall.
it became
I'm short.
allegedly it became an issue of health, right? I would say that on the opposite end of the spectrum, I'm getting older, like you said. We all put a little weight on. I'm trying to make sure that I stay as trim and svelte as possible. I told you that my motivation for doing this was the fact that we are having another child, and I don't want to be, lumping it through my 40s and 50s while trying to maintain a certain baseline energy for raising a kid.
I love that you're working out. I love that you're doing cardio. I love that you've cut sugar and processed foods and vegetable oils and things like that out of your diet, seed oils. That's all amazing. I just don't want you to get any skinnier. I don't like a petite man. I feel like it becomes feminine and it gets like creepy.
So I've been hovering around like the low 160s. I told you my goal basically was to hang out around 160. If I'm on the 150s side of things, I'm okay with that. And with dieting in the past, I think I've gotten down to like 157.
Way too skinny.
And Melissa again hates it.
God, his arms get skinny, and your shoulders get,
No,
because
but-
you're an Asian man, so you become like a little Asian man.
It's going to happen regardless.
And
There's no avoiding that.
I know that eventually you're going to be like this little guy that goes out and looks at his fruit trees.
Mhm.
But
That's the dream.
I know. And I know that that's going to happen. And you're going to have the polyester pants and the flat butt and everything. And I will embrace these things. But right now, like, I don't want you to be too, just stop losing weight. When
How about
you
this?
wanted me to stop, when you wanted me to stop losing weight, I started eating more. And now I want you to stop losing weight because I don't like it. And then when I say things like, you'll be like, Melissa, don't cut your hair. I like your hair better long. And I'm like, fine, I'll grow it long.
Oh, no.
But then when I'm like, Jeremy, I think you should fade up your hair a little bit. I don't know what you're quite doing right now. Like, you're like, I don't care what I look like. So how come you get to tell me to do my hair a certain way or have a certain way? But then when I tell you, the response is, I don't care what I look like. And you don't get an opinion on that.
I think you're so beautiful, Mom. I love the way that you look. Like, yeah, amazing. I don't know. I just don't.
What?
I'm just trying to buy bonus points for myself right now.
It's working.
I feel great, though. I told you, like, I feel amazing. Never before have I been on any kind of a diet that has impacted me as much as this current diet. You know, I've been working out with Kaimani every day. Like,
That's cool.
I feel great. I really do, and it's been very motivating in the process. So it's been there's been kind of this snowball effect. I ate yesterday a whole bunch. You know what I've eaten today?
Yesterday.
So to give you guys an
Nothing.
example of how
He ate nothing today.
this fasting goes, it is currently, what time is it? It is currently 2 p.m. on the dot, on the nose right now. You know what I've had to eat today? I had a cup of black coffee. That's it. Which sounds really weird, but I feel great. We'll get done here. I'll go inside. I'll eat the rest of that steak and a half that I have in a Ziploc bag. I'll work out with Kaimani tonight. Like I will
steak.
I promise you, I will start to maybe incorporate a little more on the carbohydrate side of things. It's hard because I do feel good with what I've been doing is all I'm saying.
I love that you feel good. I love that you're bonding with Kaimani. I think all of that is great. I just don't want you to lose any more weight.
I got you. I don't think I have that much more weight to lose though. Even if I tried.
You have no more.
No, I'm not.
No more weight to lose.
I'm not. I still got the back fat. Like, you know, I'm that's the last little chunk that I wanted to try to eliminate. I've been doing a lot of cardio. Anyway, the hair though, what? You want me to fade it up? I'll fade it up if you want me to.
I mean, I'd like you to like tighten it up.
Let me know down in the comments what I should do, everyone. Do you agree with Melissa? Should I cut the hair? I told her this is just my winter do. I've been really lazy with haircuts. I cut my own hair usually. So
also, I feel like this isn't a fair representation of what you walk around the house looking like.
Oh no, it's not.
Because you brushed your hair to like do the podcast.
Well, yeah.
But when
otherwise it's just a fluff ball.
It's like and then he's like, what don't you like about it? And then he does this thing where he fluffs the front. So
what?
Yeah, you fluff the front so then it's tall, but it's like
you know, this is a lot of focus on me to start the podcast, which wasn't our intention whatsoever.
You called me bulbousy 2 weeks ago. This is just payback for that.
All I'm saying is, look at this. We're like almost 10 minutes into this here. I'm saying like I wasn't going to comment or remark on your pregnancy because I don't want to make a habit out of doing that. I'm sure everybody out there is tired of hearing it, but
maybe
you look beautiful. Despite everything it is you just said about me for the last 10 minutes, you look absolutely stunning.
I can't help it. It's the gray matter shrinking in my brain. No, you know, I think that you're a beefcake, but I like you a little beefy. I like my beefcakes beefy. That's all I'm saying. I don't want a skinny beefcake. No one wants one of those artificial meat burgers.
Grass-fed over here, mama. Grass-fed.
Yeah. You're meat-fed, actually.
I'm actually the complete opposite of that currently. That didn't make any sense.
Okay, moving on. Jeremy, you look beautiful. And
thanks,
everybody
mama.
Tell Jeremy down in the comments how beautiful he
You don't have to
looks.
tell me anything.
I got all the nice comments a week ago, so maybe it's Jeremy's turn. I'm just jealous because I'm getting bigger by the day.
That's what I figured. I wasn't going to say it, but yeah. Beautiful. I'm in so much trouble later. Oh my gosh.
You don't get in trouble later. Depends on my mood. No, I'm just joking. Okay, moving on.
So you guys know we love Data Wire Plus for all their movies, podcasts, news, and documentaries like What is a Woman and Am I Racist? Speaking of Am I Racist, they just released a hilarious behind the scenes on the making of it called Clearing the Air, the making of Am I Racist? And it's only on Daily Wire Plus.
Yeah, we actually had the pleasure of sitting down with Matt to discuss his experience making Am I Racist, but we still had so many questions about how Matt and crew were able to gain access to some of these people and events that actually made the documentary possible. And Clearing the Air was just as funny as the documentary itself. In fact, here's a little sneak peek of that.
The very last thing we filmed.
We went into that needing something specific for the story.
Remind me of your name again.
Steven.
And then, in a moment,
I would really appreciate it if you left.
Are you saying I needed a better disguise? Is that what you?
I don't know, maybe.
it all came together.
It really does take an incredible amount of talent to pull it off, and this is where Matt Walsh just completely shined.
I think with the group setting, it's sort of easier. There's just a lot you can sort of play with there.
Documentary filmmaking is constantly evolving.
You have to roll with the punches.
Every 30 seconds you're like, oh my gosh, are we exposed? Are we done? We had no right to pull off what we pulled off.
I seriously have no idea how they kept a straight face, but we are so glad they were able to pull it off because both the documentary and the behind the scenes are a must watch. Also, right now is the perfect time to join Daily Wire Plus because when you click the link down below or go to getdwplus.com/NWOS and use our code NWOS30, you will get 30% off your annual subscription. So go have yourself a movie night tonight and enjoy.
Speaking of moving on and taking a break, tomorrow in real time, as we are recording this, tomorrow is the Super Bowl. We all know who won as you are watching this because this comes out on the Wednesday following the game. We're not here to like dissect sports or the Super Bowl, but it brought up a really interesting point with Melissa because going back a few years, our family, we collectively every Sunday would get together and watch our Seattle Seahawks, who we are and were fans of at the time when they were really good, especially. But just really the relevance of football and celebrity and Americana in our lives here today. Do we not find, because this was the conclusion that you and I ultimately came to, is that these events no longer hold the same level of relevance that they once did? I feel like all the build up here to this, the big game that's happening less than 24 hours from now, I haven't seen any media on it. That's because of my own personal decision making, but it just doesn't have the same feel that it once did. And I don't know if that's because we have so much going on in our personal lives now, as opposed to if you were to go back, 20, 30 years. But it just seems like these things like the Grammys also just happened. It seems like nobody was really talking about that unless you were pinpointing and pointing out all the terribly egregious and ridiculous things that were occurring during that show.
Even that wasn't that big of a deal, really. I mean, if it were 25 years ago and somebody paraded their wife, Kanye, onto the red carpet and then had them stripped naked, that would have been huge news. I remember the Janet Jackson thing that was massive news, and she had to respond to it, and it was like almost ruined her career, and they were fine. Like all this stuff happened, like stuff like that just is like, okay, it was a big deal for like 1 hour. Everyone went, oh my gosh, do you see Kanye's West?
Do you think that this is just us, like we're detached and removed from the way that so many other people live? Or do you think that literally in our culture, these things just aren't as important as they once were?
I think that we had way less entertainment. I mean, we used to sit together as a family and watch the Miss America pageant. Does anyone sit around and watch the Miss America pageant anymore?
Not in this household, no.
Yeah, like I remember, wasn't it Donald Trump that was
Miss USA, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't remember. I just remember watching it as a kid with my family, and there'd be snacks there.
Yeah.
Like my mom would make snacks for Miss America or Miss USA or Miss Universe or whatever.
Yeah, we'd watch it.
Everyone did. Everyone was rooting for their people from their state.
Well, because it was a big thing in Hawaii too, because we had a couple of winners, like Caroline Sapp. I remember when I was a kid. And
you remember her name?
Yeah, literally. That's how big of a deal it was at the time. And I think the world was just smaller, so things just had more of a feel of emphasis to them. Yeah, but that's especially true in Hawaii whenever anything significant like that happens.
And people would have Grammy parties where they would get dressed up and they would have fancy dinners.
Yeah,
I remember attending a Grammy party.
I feel like it's just all kind of become a joke. Again, let us know down in the comments whether or not this is just Melissa and I and our family with how it is that we live in this isolated bubble that we always talk about.
I don't know.
Or if you yourself are experiencing this to where it seems like none of this really matters. And in fact, I feel like it's kind of like you said, it only becomes a joke to where we're just pointing things out. Like how ludicrous and like absolutely absurd has all of this become. I feel like Hollywood celebrity as a whole is just kind of out the door at this point.
Yeah, I think that's true. There's just, I mean, even the Olympics used to be huge. And now the only thing that anyone was talking about at the Olympics this year was the opening ceremonies.
You think it's become too hyper political and that's the reason everyone's shying away from it? Because you could say the same is true for our show here.
Yeah, because we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, I think like the opening ceremonies became a very political thing. And then having biological men competing became a big topic during the Olympics. But it was all negative, controversial, political stuff that became a big deal. And nothing really positive was. Where before we used to rally behind Team America and
Team America.
Yeah, like America.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we just stopped the song there. But Yeah, I don't know that the world was smaller, but there's so much out there now with streaming and YouTube and podcasts and all these different Netflix and
Well, let me ask you: you're not as big, or you haven't been as big of a football fan as
I'm a fair weather fan.
yeah. When it comes to the Seahawks, you are.
For sure.
Are you excited for the Super Bowl at all? Because
No.
I've historically been a really big football fan, and I honestly could care less, which for me is really weird.
Jeremy's just happy about breaking his diet and some hot wings.
Yeah, that's going down.
Yeah.
So I'll be putting on some of that weight tomorrow.
I use these events to pull our family in because I like to celebrate anything. So it's like, guys, it's Super Bowl. We're going to have it's kind of like New Year's or Valentine's. Those are just family events and excuses to get together and eat.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, but are you excited about the actual game and what
Not
it
at all.
represents? I mean, the Super Bowl is Americana at its finest. I mean, if there's one event you could point to annually that just represents all things that are America, I mean, I think the Super Bowl would have to be it, right? It's just over the top in all ways.
I like the flyover, but even that became political.
It's in a
the
dome
last
this year. There
one.
will be no flyover.
What?
It's
No
in
flyover?
it's in New Orleans in the Superdome, so no flyover. Yeah, I do love that. Like those moments, right? Like
I'm
that's
just
what we're
there
talking
for the
about.
nachos and the guac at this point.
Whitney Houston in I think LA back in the
so
day,
good.
like such great moments. But I'm just not. I don't. It feels like nothing is significant anymore. Like everything has lost its significance.
Yeah, I don't like the singing of the two separate national anthems. You know, like there's one for white people and there's one, like, why are we doing division in everything? Why? I don't like stuff like that. I don't like politicizing stuff where it's supposed to like be uniting.
There's a lot of weird things that are happening this year. I saw that it was just announced, I think yesterday, that they're removing the end racism stamp from all the fields and like the back of the helmets and stuff. You know how, so for as big of a football fans as we were, especially during the 20 teens, we moved here to Idaho and I took a good season and a half off from watching football. I watched no NFL football, which for me was a weird thing.
That was like 2020,
2021 season. Yeah, I think a big part of that was that we were just so busy here, but also I was so turned off by like all the political statements that were being made because they were so heavily skewed in one direction, and I felt as though it was done in large part to a lot of the George Floyd like anti-law enforcement sentiment that was around at the time. And me with my background, I was like, you know what, I'm out.
Yeah.
I've come back to it because kind of like you said, I enjoy the family aspect of it and the fact that, you know, in the past, it really has brought us together, and especially when your team's doing well and we're all rooting together. Good times, good moments. But in general, like I'm not excited for the game tomorrow at all. I'm sick of seeing the same storylines. I don't want to hear the post-game interviews where, you know, the comparisons are being made to like warfare. I don't.
Yeah, like we're warriors. No, you're not.
I don't want to hear the we're world champions, even though we play in a league that only exists here in our country with a sport that exists really only in our country. It's just everything's just kind of, maybe I'm just getting old and
Curmudgeons.
freaking grumpy because nothing feels special to me at this
You know,
point.
it isn't old. Your physique.
Thanks, Mama.
Yeah. Okay. 25.
So I don't know, just an interesting thing. Like I said, let us know down in the comments what you guys think. Let me ask you, since we're recording this on Saturday, who do you think wins the game tomorrow?
Chiefs.
The Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm so sick of them.
I think
I'm so sick of them. And then every time that something happens, they flash up to Taylor Swift and she's going, oh, I'm so surprised.
Melissa loves her some Taylor Swift. If you were a regular viewer of the podcast, you know how she feels.
She wears her red lipstick and she's like, oh, she looks so surprised every time. What are you surprised about? It's the Chiefs.
Yeah.
We all know how this ends.
I mean, I'm rooting for the Eagles.
Of course.
Completely
I think
impartial.
Anyone but Chiefs fans are rooting for the Eagles.
I'm more so rooting against Kansas City because I'm sick and tired of seeing it.
Yeah,
So-
I know. It's just like, it's such a repeat. We've already seen these teams play. I'm like,
Yeah.
Like if there was like a underdog in there or something. Last year, crazy enough, I was actually rooting for the Niners because I love their quarterback. He just seems like such a nice guy.
Yeah,
So
Brock Purdy, great guy.
I was rooting for Purdy.
We tried to land him on the podcast as a guest, and our ask, I think, just came too late because they were jumping into the season this
Yeah.
year. So
Yeah, maybe
it'd be
we'll
so awesome to make that happen in the future. I don't know that that's possible, but we'll
send
see.
everyone over to
Yeah.
ask him.
Positive thoughts.
No, yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard. It's actually getting more and more difficult. We had a really interesting opportunity present itself this week, but it involved a bunch of travel and everything. And then I played with the idea of like, can we make this work?
For a guest,
Yeah.
the one you brought up. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Which was one that we wanted to have for so long. And it's like this great opportunity. And I'm just so pregnant. It's like, can I jump on an airplane right now? Should I jump on an airplane right now? Like, am I just not being rational about the fact that I'm so pregnant? Because technically, when the midwife said, oh, you can fly to 34 weeks. So I'm like, okay, I've got like 3 weeks I can fly. Can we put the, but then maybe that's just dumb.
It's not worth the risk. I told you. We're not doing that.
I could be that person that has the air baby, the airplane baby, and like the flight attendant delivers the baby. She could be a hero.
You and I are both very ambitious people. And so we get presented with these opportunities and we start rationalizing in our brains. We start compromising with ourselves on like how we can make things happen. Man, this one hurt though. I'm not going to lie.
This one hurt. And I don't think it's going anywhere.
I hope not.
I hope not either. Hopefully like I don't know, but I feel like all in good timing, all how it's supposed to play out. But it was really right now.
Yeah.
Like we had so long ago. Why right now?
We could have made it happen in the past. That's the reason we're so frustrated by it. Interesting week on the political front. I know so many of you out there don't like hearing our take when it comes to politics. If you watched our episode last week where we spoke about our trip to Texas and then we brought up just the pro-life aspect of the Trump presidency thus far, we got so much feedback. A lot of very
feedback.
Passionate comments and remarks directed at us as a result, as we always do when it comes to anything politics, as we always expect. We love the conversations. We love, exploring and hearing from some dissenting opinions. I don't think those are the right words.
I think as long as people can keep it respectful, that's fine. But like when you start name calling and like, I don't know, it just gets kind of crazy. It doesn't make us not want to share our views or anything like that. But I think what like a big thing that we've kind of been accused of lately is changing. You've changed. We got that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's very important to put out the fact that we haven't changed. This is always who we've been. And so, I mean, it's just who we are to our fiber and to our core. We've always really cared about certain issues. There's been issues that, there's mountains that I will die on defending because they are so important and they've always been important to me. So these aren't new. It's not like we've just all of a sudden discovered these. It's just that we're being a little more vocal on them because now we have a podcast. And when you sit here and you talk for hours at a time and all this stuff is going on, these are important issues. So they're like, just don't touch those issues. Don't talk about them. And it's like, well, these are important.
How does it make you feel when we get those comments of like, hey, don't touch this. Don't speak on that. I don't want to hear that from you. How does it make you feel?
I'm just kind of like, this is our real life and this is how we really feel and this is who we are. And we are going to talk about whatever we want to talk about. We're not going to be told by somebody with an opposing view to be silent. I think America I think people in general were afraid to speak up. And now it's gotten to the point where they don't want to be silent anymore. Like I say, I'm too old and too pregnant to like put up with nonsense right now. So I'm just going to speak my opinion on issues.
I think the perception part of this is really interesting because we get people who literally lash out. And I'm not trying to depict ourselves as victims. We actually like when I say we enjoy this.
He loves it.
I probably enjoy it more than Melissa does. I like having the discussion regardless of how it goes from people becoming incredibly impassioned. I get that. I'm guilty of it myself. We've pointed this out before. And so I enjoy the entanglements, let's say.
Healthy debate is good.
We're also not going out of our way. I think a lot of people take it from a perception standpoint of like, you guys are trying to poke and aggravate. Mm-hmm. And that's not our intention whatsoever. It is what it is. People get really fired up when it comes to these discussions. And, we definitely play our role in that.
Yeah, for sure. And then we also get a lot of questions that I think are very fair questions. And then we get a lot of people that will pose a question and try to use like our past lives or careers against us. So we've gotten a lot this week on how can you as a cop believe this or believe this or believe this? How can you as an ex-cop?
The example that was brought up repeatedly this past week was the January 6th insurrection. Was it January 6th? Am I getting my dates wrong?
No, that's right.
The insurrection that occurred at the Capitol building back in 2020. Was that 2021? whenever it happened.
Yeah.
Clearly, this wasn't that impactful.
It was
on
2021
me.
because it was January.
People were frustrated at the fact that Trump came into office and pardoned a bunch of these insurrectionists
Mhm.
who made an attempt to overthrow our federal government, apparently.
In the darkest day in American
The
history.
darkest day in American history.
Let's forget about
Yeah,
Pearl Harbor and 9/11.
So trying to understand how it is that I can be supportive of a president that would take such an action. And I'll put it as simply as I possibly can. I believe in laws. I believe in our justice system. I believe in accountability as a whole. So if there were unlawful actions that were taken on that date and time, I believe that those people should be held fully accountable. However, I don't think that what you saw with the overwhelming majority of the people who were subjected to these enforcement actions, I think the motivation behind it was primarily due to political reasons. And hey, you partook in something that we deemed to be just absolutely incomprehensible. And the fact that you were an active participant in this insurrection, as we are now labeling it, I view it as purely political. Tucker Carlson did a great job of exposing and utilizing, tapping into a lot of the closed circuit, just surveillance security footage.
Full unedited videos.
Fully unedited videos, including many of the very well-known participants from that day. And I think the depiction of what occurred on that day nowhere near resembles the reality of what it is that actually occurred. There are instances of police officers who were literally providing essentially what appeared to be like guided tours of the Capitol building. Like, hey, let me walk with you. Let me escort you through the building. Let me remove these barricades. Let me hold the door open for you as you make your way in to where it's not even forced entry. Again, I'm not trying to make excuses for the people who did things that were harmful to others or actually violated laws and victimized people. Full accountability for those folks. But I don't think you can cast this broad net and say, hey, all of you now, just for your mere presence, are going to be held criminally liable for your actions on that day.
You guys know that we are all about being prepared, and we have had this fun tradition that at tax return time, we roll our annual refund into getting our family just a little bit more prepared every single year. And we are encouraging you to do the same just for a little added insurance and peace of mind.
Last episode, we shared with you some of our favorite things and the steps we're taking to hopefully give you guys a good place to start for your own family and a company that we trust personally to help with all things preparedness, from long-term food storage, water filtration, solar energy backups, and even bug-out accessories, is American Reserves.
Yeah, American Reserves provides top quality emergency preparedness supplies that align perfectly with our lifestyle and our values. Supporting American-made products is important to us, and we appreciate that American Reserves shares our commitment to faith, freedom, quality, and sustainability.
Their products have become a trusted part of our daily routines here on the homestead, and more importantly, our preparations for whatever may come. So as we all maneuver this new year and all the crazy stuff we're seeing across the country and around the world, we can all take steps towards making sure that our own families and homes are more prepared.
Since we all need to start somewhere, we recommend you commit this year to making sure that every single member of your household has at least a 30-day long-term food supply, and please make sure that you have a good off-grid water filtration system as well. That's step one, and then you can build your supply from there. Cool thing is, American Reserves is the perfect one-stop shop for everything that you need.
So if you're looking to enhance your own preparedness with dependable American-made products, visit AmericanReserves.com and use our code SOUZA, as SOUZA, at checkout to enjoy a 15% discount exclusively for our community.
My view of it is, as a parent, if one of my kids got in trouble doing something stupid, let's make it a school, and their friends and maybe some school admin that wanted to get a certain group of kids in trouble was like, hey, and like egged him on, but he chose to participate, I would still be mad at him. I would say, yes, maybe you were baited in, or maybe you followed the crowd, but you are responsible for your actions and your decisions, and therefore you followed in and you participated.
You're guilty by mere association.
Yeah. And by making the choice to participate. These were adults, and some of them did stupid things.
Also, let me just say, not to excuse again, if you were there and you had unlawfully entered the building, you weren't supposed to be there. Again, I believe in accountability. However, I think the punishment should also fit the crime.
Right.
I don't think that you should be
trespassing is
not
punishable by prison.
You shouldn't be put in prison for an extended period of time for merely being in the building. Again, I hold people accountable, but the punishment should also fit the crime.
Now, there was a Capitol police officer, because people have asked us specifically about this, being that you were a cop. There was a Capitol police officer that was sprayed in the face with mace, and then he died.
OC.
Sorry. And then he was he later died of a stroke, like the next day or 2 days later. And they said that it was natural causes. Could it have been stress induced? Very likely it could have been. So when it comes to that guy was pardoned, the guy that assaulted him, I kind of had a problem. I mean, I actually really do have a problem with that pardon, because if it had been you, then I would want your attacker to be held responsible, not for your death, but for the assault that they participated in.
Your emotional investment would be different if it were personal. Like for his family members, and I guess they are frustrated and upset with that decision.
Upset, yeah.
Completely understand. I completely get it.
Yeah, I don't know about the blind pardons. And I feel like you can support a party without agreeing with every single thing they did. I do believe that most of them deserve to be pardoned. But if you broke things and it was vandalism, then I think that we have stuff in place that I definitely think you should be doing community service and things like that for vandalism. If you assaulted someone and you were convicted of that assault, then I do think that you should have served your time. I don't think you should just blindly be pardoned.
We can't pick and choose and be inconsistent.
Right.
And I think, again, this whole thing just is political. And so we always hear people who are on the leftist end of the spectrum, the more liberal end of the political spectrum, like harping on this. I don't feel like anybody else really cares. I feel like it was a blip in time, and literally outside of liberal media and those who buy into the liberal propaganda that is spewed by liberal media, none of your average Americans give two craps about what happened on that day.
Yeah,
we've moved on.
And that's not what determined people's votes. And that's not like this overwhelming issue that made it to where it's like, oh, okay, now we're going to vote for Kamala Harris because of January 6th. That just didn't even come into play. I guess
what I'm saying is the fact that anyone is dwelling on this is so bizarre and odd to me when at the same time, during the same period of time, you had people burning their cities down.
Right.
That we on the conservative end of things could very easily point to and harp on all the time of like, hey, you're being a complete hypocrite here because you clearly aren't pro-police. You tried to defund the police. You wanted to hold police officers accountable, put them in prison for doing their jobs. You're not the party of law enforcement. In fact, this may come as a shocker to many of you out there. I would say that 90+% of those who are actively involved in law enforcement are on the conservative end of things. You will never openly hear that because they're not going to represent their agency, their department, and come out and actually acknowledge that truth and reality. But I can tell you from having been a police officer for 14 years that is 100% the case. It's an overwhelming majority of military and law enforcement who are conservative. They're not looking at the Democratic Party or liberals in our country thinking that they are friends. That's just not the way that this has gone.
Yeah,
historically,
it isn't the way that it's gone. And I think that it's definitely cherry picking to say you can't vote for this party because you were a police officer and this one police officer was assaulted. And that, like our Capitol was breached and everything. When you do have situations like Minneapolis or Dallas or Seattle, like that whole CHOP,
take your pick,
the summer of love, until very quickly women were being assaulted inside CHOP. There were 2 teenagers that were shot, and then one of them died because first responders couldn't get to them safely, and the guy bled to death. And then the family got angry and tried suing the Seattle Police Department, saying, you didn't help our son. But it's like they had all these police don't enter.
You don't want them in there.
Yeah, you didn't want them in there.
They're the enemy.
I mean, there were 5 Dallas police officers that were killed. There were police officers that were killed. There were thousands that were assaulted. There were thousands that were OC sprayed. And we're just going to pick this one instance on this political side.
Insurrection. You're missing the element of insurrection. These people were trying to overthrow our federal government. Also, there have been numerous. So anytime there's any kind of a protest or in this case, what has been deemed an insurrection, I will tell you with absolute certainty, I have no actual evidence to point to, but I can tell you with a high level of confidence that there are law enforcement agents within this crowd. And if you look back historically, like you look back at 1999, the WTO riots that actually occurred in Seattle. My dad was an active participant on the law enforcement side of things when that erupted. There are agent provocateurs. This is a proven, undeniable fact at this point. There are agent provocateurs, and there are many stories and theories coming out about January 6th to suggest that there were agent provocateurs, maybe that worked on behalf of like the CIA, or name your favorite 3-letter agency. who were actually responsible for instigating everything it is that occurred as far as acts of violence on that day. So
Yeah,
take
there's
it for
road
what it's
barriers
worth, and
taken
but these are
down
things that
and-
are never openly discussed by those who just want to deem and demonize anyone who was a participant of said insurrection.
You just can't take one event and ignore Minneapolis. Minneapolis was such a bigger deal. It really was.
It's
So
huge.
many people were injured. Buildings, businesses, Black-owned businesses were burned to the ground. Police cars were flipped over and burned. I mean, imagine if that had happened in Washington, D.C. I think it was liberal lawmakers getting angry because you entered their house.
Yeah, that's 100% what it was.
But they
yeah.
didn't care when Black-owned businesses and barbershops and
No.
bakeries and restaurants were being burned to
No.
the ground because, we don't live there.
All the
It's
same
fine.
politicians, all the same senators, congressmen, women who were demonizing the police, speaking nothing but
Yeah, you need
negatively.
to let them protest.
Speaking nothing but negatively about law enforcement that same given period of time. We're like now heralding them as heroes on January 6th because
Yeah,
they came to
exactly.
our defense. And oh my goodness, those poor cops were being attacked because it was them who were standing between the insurrectionists and they themselves. It was these officers who are now heroes. Oh my goodness, forget everything it is that Maxine Waters and everyone else on the left had to say about law enforcement back in those days. Maxine Waters, who was cracking me up earlier this week because of
With
what
the
happened with the Department of Education.
We got to get into that.
Hilarious. But it's such a ludicrous argument, and to be on the receiving end of these questions from some of you out there, like I find it really odd, like I said, that so many people are hung up on this event that occurred numerous years ago now, literally an entire presidency ago, an entire term. It just goes to show the level of buy-in and manipulation to come along
Cherry
with
picking.
those who just, I think it's more so the media, though. I blame it on the media
For
because
sure.
you have MSNBC, CNN, all the others that like harp on this January 6th. When you talk to the American general population, like the general public at large, like nobody freaking cares at this point. Like, what are we doing
It didn't
here?
determine anyone's vote.
No.
Like nobody.
Not at
So
all.
just drop it and move on to things that matter to people in their everyday life, in their families, in their communities, and that ain't it.
Amen, sister. So conversely, you as
Amen,
a former teacher, you received
Yeah.
a number of questions about the Department of Education being obliterated by Trump via executive order this week, and again, all the hilarious shenanigans. If you have not yet caught again all of the Democratic Congress people who were trying to barge their way into the Department of Education there in DC with a lone security guard standing in their way, interfering, refusing to allow them access into the building. It's hilarious, and it just speaks to the level of theater and dramatics that they're willing to go to try to make a mountain out of a molehill. You are being denied access. And I recall Maxine Waters at one point like saying, look at these police officers. What is your name? I need to see your badge again. It's like, I already showed you my badge.
Yeah.
I need to see it. And then he refuses. The whole thing is just comical. And again, it's made real life seem as though it's like a SNL skit. Like nothing feels real, to go back to our Super Bowl tie-in and just the world just having
There's a
feeling
lot of theater.
surreal. There's so much theater.
Yeah, it's almost like, like have you ever watched like a court hearing or like the government type stuff that goes on over in Europe when they have the wigs and they're
I
all
love
yelling
it.
at each other and everything?
I love watching the Canadians go back and forth. It's
yeah.
it's fantastic.
I feel like we're just absolutely the same. It's such theater and it's so ridiculous.
British Parliament. I'm a weird guy. I watch weird things. I like
It's
watching
entertaining.
Canadian Parliament go back and forth. It really
I like
is.
the wigs.
The wigs are great.
I don't. Why are
Bring
we
back
still
the
wearing
wigs
those?
here.
No,
Come
just
on.
don't.
You don't want to see JD Vance in a wig? Let's do this.
Looking like a founding father. I look
Yeah.
like a founding father when I try to do a low ponytail.
We need to bring back lords and commoners and all that. Let's do it. I'm all for
I
it.
love it. Tar and feather them. Yeah. So, okay. So you've been getting a lot of police questions, but they're not really questions or more accusations. I like a good, healthy question, but when it's an accusation, it's just like, ugh. So I've had two reoccurring themes this week. One of them was on the defunding of the Department of Education. And I think that the way that it's being portrayed in the media is that funding for education, public education, is going away. And it's not. Like, the Department of Education is actually relatively new, and education has only gone downhill since it started. So it started in 1979. Jimmy Carter brought it on. It's definitely widely understood. It was supposed to bridge the discrepancy gap amongst communities by standardizing everything.
Right.
And then it was supposed to bring up test scores for marginalized communities and everything. But really, all that it's done is plummeted rates across the board. Like math and reading have just gone down over the last 45 years. Every single arrow is down. Nothing is doing better. Like when after World War I and World War II, and we had like all these booms and everything and all this innovation in America, that was all way before the Department of Education.
Yeah.
And so what you have is you have this really fat, top-heavy group of bureaucrats that's only providing 10% of the funding. It's not 100% of our public education funding. Most of it comes from the states.
Mm-hmm.
But because they provide about $2,400 per student per year, it's about 10% of the funding. They get to make 100% of the regulations and decisions.
They get to dictate.
Yeah. And these aren't parents. These aren't even educators. These are just
Bureaucrats.
Politicians.
Yeah, federal government.
And so much of the regulation and funding and allocation and everything is to make their own people happy and to get reelected and all of this stuff. It's so political and it doesn't help the kids at all. So I think the Department of Education is a massive failure. If you said, we're going to start this for this purpose, and then 45 years later, it has only made it significantly worse.
Scrap it.
Scrap it. It's not working. And I don't know why that's such a controversial thing.
Of course, we as a homeschooling family believe what we do. But I mean, when you lay it out, yeah, it's common sense. Like if you dive into the end result of what it is that we're producing, you pluck your average individual student and you compare that to, let's say, a homeschooler. I mean, it's hard to argue. Like our schools suck.
They're really bad.
Even in their own
Let's be
analysis, even in the federal government's analysis of the actual school, public schooling programs here in our country, like our schools suck. They don't read proficiently. They don't write in a manner that is sufficient. Like it's really sad and unfortunate. And I get that it's the option that is most readily available for so many people. Like we get told all the time, like, that's great, you guys homeschool. My family and I cannot do that. I get it that there are circumstances that prevent people from maybe wanting to take on homeschooling or having the financial means to stick their kid into a really great private school. But I just think if we're going to say that the public school system is the safety net for society, we should be doing better. And clearly the Department of Education isn't following through with that goal.
No, they're totally failing. So they're spending $83 billion in elementary and secondary ed. Now, Detroit is the worst school district
in the country. That sucks.
Yeah, Detroit does the worst. They have they're 5% proficient in reading, 5%, 3% in math.
Wait, 5% from K through 12?
Yeah.
That's what?
That's
really?
Like insane.
5%?
Right. 3% in math. Now, that is a massive amount of kids not at grade level. And they rated their teachers 99% highly effective. So now we're just not telling the truth here.
Wait, who's this? This is all coming from the Department of Education itself?
This is an article that was in The Sun, but the stats are from the Department of Education. And you can look these up.
So they 99% favorability rate with their teachers, with their staff, but they're 5% of the kids are reading at a proficient level.
Yeah, and they're kind of blaming it on the community, and I buy into that a little bit because the number one stat that dictates whether or not kids are successful in school, strangely, is having two parents at home.
Yeah,
it is the number one thing. So the Department of Education can't really fix that. This is a problem within communities. This is a problem within mostly fathers. Like men need to step up and take care of their children and stay with whatever woman they're breeding with.
Yeah.
Like,
no, that completely factors in 100%.
Yeah.
But that's a whole separate discussion. It's just another way in which our country and society, our culture is broken.
Yeah. But I mean, I read something like Asian Americans, for example. Asian Americans do better than anyone else. They're better than Caucasians. I know, they're so smart.
Killing it.
My kids are Asian. That's why the Asian American population is only 6% of the population, but they have in their family, 85% have a 2-parent household.
Yeah.
And so that's really important compared to, like, unfortunately, African-American families, 37% have a 2-family household. And this is damaging kids more than anything. So it's like we need these communities to step up, which is probably a big part of the issues in Detroit, but the Department of Education isn't going to pull Detroit schools out of this problem by putting in all these social programs and LGBTQ programs and everything. Stop spending money on that kind of crap and let's start focusing on math and reading. But the big problem with the Department of Education dictating anything is it's a federal program and it's not localized. Education, what dismantling the Department of Education does is it gives it back to the states. It should 100% be with the states. Now, if they want to take that same federal funding and give it to the states to then give out to the schools as they deem necessary, fine.
What's the reason you think that all of that burden decision making should fall upon the states rather than the federal government?
Because problems and needs are localized. So we have different, America
just a
has
general familiarity with your own needs.
Yeah, I mean, some schools have ESL kids up to 50%. They're going to have different needs and they're going to need different curriculums than a school that is predominantly English speaking and maybe, like think of a Bel Air school is going to have very different needs than Detroit or than Texas that maybe has a lot of ESL kids or Eastern Washington. I mean, the school
What
where
is ESL for those who don't know?
English as your second language.
Yeah.
So I taught in Las Vegas school districts and I had quite a few ESL kids and I had one kid that spoke Filipino and I had one kid that was from Africa that we didn't even know what language she
Melissa's
spoke.
classroom was insane. It was crazy.
Diverse.
Seriously.
And that time period was No Child Left Behind and everything was so standardized.
So let's dive into that because I guess that's probably my biggest issue with the Department of Education and like the standardization of everything is the decision making and the what's the word I'm looking for, the strategies that they implement, like to me just are so nonsensical, like No Child Left Behind or like all the Common Core crap that was coming out a few years ago.
Common
Like
Core was
what
so
are we
bad.
doing? Why are we making this the mandatory way that we are instructing our children? Makes no sense.
They get paid kickbacks.
No,
We have
get
this
it, but
program.
that's the
We're going to
problem.
pump billions of dollars into it and you guys are going to mandate it throughout the country. And the only people that suffer are kids.
Yeah.
No Child Left Behind was so horrible because it was financially benefiting the schools that had kids pass the test, but then the tests were leaked early. And that's a problem because now the teachers are looking at the test going, my kids have to pass this test and I'm just going to teach them these answers. And the math curriculum was horrible. I remember telling my admin, like, this math curriculum is horrible. It's so bad. And it was all manipulative math. It was all like blocks and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, they're not learning how to do these problems on paper. This is not practical. Nobody walks around the grocery store with their little blocks and their little tens sticks and they're like, why are we doing this? This is dumb. This is not the most practical way. Like, we should be teaching the kids to come to these conclusions. And they weren't allowed to do mental math.
Yep.
Which, we have a kid that only does mental math, drives me crazy. Drives me mental because...
because it's not how you and I learned back in the 80s
right.
and 90s.
You have to write it out. And he's like, why? I can do it in my head. And he's right.
He is.
But
he's finding the correct answer anyway.
I know. And I told him, in a classroom, you would fail because you're not showing your work.
I tell him the same thing all the time.
I said,
Spoken like two true public school kids.
I'm like, you could have 100% on your test and you're going to get 50% because you didn't show your work. And then I'm like, what am I talking about? I sound like like I can't get out of this. Like, just let the kid do it the way he's doing it.
That's
It's
the
efficient.
indoctrination, though. That's what I'm saying. And I guess my bigger thing, like teaching to the test. Can we talk about that? Because this is something you're far better versed as a former public school teacher on any of this than I am. But I would see in my time as a school resource officer, like kids passing classes that I knew had absolutely zero business passing classes, kids that were graduating to where I was like, there's no freaking way that kid is meeting the minimum qualifications to be graduating from high school. I've taken written statements from some of these kids where I'm like, this looks like a 4-year-old wrote this statement. There are spelling errors galore. The capitalization of letters that are completely unnecessary. This is basically one giant wrong. There's zero structure to it. I'm like, you are about to join the workforce or go to school, a university potentially.
They have university scholarships and they can't.
Yeah, you can't even write a proper paragraph with punctuation. Like, how are you graduating high school? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of this stems from the fact that we have all of these standardized tests as well.
Well, and then also go back to Detroit. So they got an F in proficiency, but they got an A in grad rates.
Yeah.
These kids are being graduated.
Right.
They can't read, but we're graduating them?
Yeah. And all of that breaks down to analytics and statistics as well, right? Because
And
we want to be
funding.
able to say, and funding. This school's doing a great job. Look, they have a passing rate or graduation rate of whatever percentage. And I know for a fact that was, I know for a fact that this is something that occurred, that these are discussions that are had of like, hey, we need to get our numbers up so that kid passes no matter what. That's not fair to the kid. You're doing that kid a massive disservice because now he or she wanders out into the world and is incompetent when
and
it comes to very
flabbergasted when their boss requires them to be there.
Right. So it's so frustrating.
Didn't have to be in school and I got an A.
I don't have the solution. This is not my area of expertise, but I am frustrated with the situation as a citizen and taxpayer.
Yeah.
Jeremy and I have been gold and silver owners for over 20 years. In fact, I first learned about precious metals from my grandfather and from my uncle, who used to give us kids silver coins every Christmas, and they taught us the importance of real money.
Yeah, gold and silver have been the currency of the world for literally thousands of years. Paper currencies like the dollar get overprinted and lose their value over time, which is why gold and silver has been our family's safety net through the years, and it's why we'd love to encourage you to learn more about their benefits as well.
There have been some fantastic fiscal changes over the past few weeks, but with the past administration's legacy of debt, it's going to take a lot of digging to get us out of this hole. But something that you can do is start protecting your own wealth against our country's history of insane money printing and inflation by buying some gold and silver now.
Yeah, we recommend you stay proactive and protect your hard-earned money, and you can learn more by calling our friends over at Lear Capital today. They'll show you just how easy it is to move some of your savings or even your retirement accounts into gold and silver that holds value and protects your wealth long-term.
To learn more, click the link below or go to learnewworld.com to get your free gold and silver wealth protection guides. There is no obligation, it's just free information. You can also call 800-330-4630, and when you do, ask how you can get up to $15,000 in bonus gold or silver with a qualifying purchase. Call today, 800-330-4630, or go to learnewworld.com.
I am happy that the Department of Education could be going away. I think that it's a good thing. I think it's going to help our states, our schools. It's going to give more power to local communities. And I think that all schools need to trim their admin. Admin is so heavy. They take all of the funding. They demand high pay. They don't deserve it. Who are these people? I feel like school boards should be made up of parents because they have an actual interest in the schools. But what you see time and time again is parents going to school board meetings, the school board completely ignoring them, disregarding them, cutting their mics off.
Having them arrested.
Yeah.
Which half the time I watch those videos, I'm like, what are they being arrested for? Like some obscure local law I'm unaware of here.
Parents will show up to a school board meeting reading a book that was mandatory reading that is straight pornography, and their mics get cut off because they're being inappropriate. But yet their fourth grader was required to read this book. And these books were mandated by a lot of these federal mandates for LGBTQ stuff. So we need to just get rid of this garbage. We need to get back to the basics. We need to give the power back to the states. And I would say trim the admin.
You're talking about complete overhaul.
Total overhaul. I think our schools are so broken and they're so top heavy and they're so run by politicians and bureaucrats. The money wasted on stupid social programs and paying unnecessary admin is mind-numbing.
It's not just our school system. There are a number of departments where that is applicable.
Right. So, yeah, I think there needs to be a total overhaul. I'm a huge advocate for charter schools. I love charter schools because it's still like a public type school. Anyone can attend. It doesn't cost anything, but the teachers can be fired. And teachers need to be able to be fired.
Accountability. Back to accountability.
If you are a bad teacher, you should be fired.
Yeah. If you're a bad cop, you should be fired.
Public school kids, 10% of them are reporting some kind of a sexual misconduct from K through 12 from either admin, a teacher, or a coach. 10% are reporting this, and it's not being investigated. So we've got problems and we've got bad people in the schools, and we need to be able to get rid of them. If you are a bad teacher that shows up and is dinking around on your phone and you're not doing a good job and you're not teaching, or you should be able to be fired like from any other job. I agree. But the unions they've become so powerful. Mm-hmm. And I remember going to teacher union meetings and going, how does this help the kids? Like, and then they're like, well, we want to get you guys an 8% raise next year. And I'm like, that's not going to make me a better teacher.
It's for the kids.
Because what I need this kind of stuff in my classroom, or maybe an aide would be nice.
Every time there's a labor strike with teaching, like teacher unions, I get like so grossed out by so much of what is said. We need this raised for the kids.
We need parents in the schools.
Yeah, I'm
room moms are
I'm
so powerful.
totally with you. Like parents should have a seat at the table when it
Yes.
comes to like school board meetings. I'm in complete agreement.
I
with
think
you.
they should be I think
They
you should
need-
be required to be a parent of a student to be on the school board.
They need better representation
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, so many of these videos from across the country. I mean, blue states, red states, doesn't matter. It's abhorrent what happens at these meetings. It's crazy.
If you don't have a child in the school, you don't have an interest.
So vested interest. Yeah, makes sense.
You don't. And then like bring back my kindergarten classroom had a total open policy of room moms. I had in one of my classes, I had 4 room moms that came every day. And there was so much power in that. They like wandered around. They knew the kids knew them. They would do all this. Like the state didn't have to pay them. The school district didn't have to pay them and they wanted to be there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
It was a beautiful thing. And
They're not only are they serving as assets, but you think that's not going to raise the level of accountability when it comes to like a teacher. Like, hey, I have a mom who's. I mean, let's be real about it. That parent's going to be observing the job that's being done by the teacher for the person that's responsible for educating their child. Like, I don't see a downside to it. I guess I don't really understand why it is that progressives have such a like. They're so turned off by like charter schools. Like they will shout like the very mentioning of it down so passionately. I'm like, what is the problem here? Do you want what's best for children? Because I think it's pretty plain to see that this is what's best. They'll argue that it isn't.
It is. Look at test rates. You cannot argue with actual statistics. Charter schools perform better. Kids that come out of charter schools perform better.
It's more so about defending a model and a slant. Right. It's just all politics. It's really all it boils down to. You're not here for the kids
and money.
You're here blindly fighting for your side based solely on politics.
You want to push your agenda.
Yes.
You want to push out these little
ideology.
I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the public school system anyway. I actually was a kindergarten teacher, and I think that kindergarten's too young to send your kids to school. Unpopular opinion, I know. I am against pre-K. I'm against pre-K. I'm against any of that. I think kindergarten's too young. I called them kinder babies. There were a few that were ready to be there, but mostly they just weren't. And I think that we, in this country, which is also relatively new, feel like, oh, we have to get the youth so young.
Yeah.
Like this whole now pre-K funding. So now we're putting 3 and 4-year-olds in a school situation.
Not even that. Like take it a step further, go to like daycare type stuff.
Those aren't as rigid and as...
Yeah, but like the Montessori schools, aren't they responsible for like an element of that is education, correct?
Yeah. But it's like, we have to start getting them used to the school model. Well, maybe the school model is where the flaw lies, because especially for little boys, which I've talked about this a lot, it just doesn't fit it doesn't fit human nature. It doesn't fit what we've done for centuries.
Regardless of gender, sex, gender, it's not one size fits all. We all learn in different ways.
Right. Even in our own, so we homeschool.
Yes.
We have 4 kids. I use different curriculum for all 4 of them, which shows how personalized curriculum and learning needs to be. So Eli's very dyslexic, so he has a very different curriculum and a very different learning style. And Kira is, she kind of like she's on my daydreamer. She doesn't really like love math. And
retention's challenging.
She's the kid that's like, am I going to use this? Am I ever going to use this?
If not, it's gone.
Yeah. So she wants to learn different things. And so we do a lot of math and measurements and stuff through cooking and canning because it's the only way I can get her to learn pints and quarts. And then Kaimani's very analytical. He loves to read books. I can give him, I can give him a book. And I mean, he read I think he read Of Mice and Men in an afternoon. I'll give him these books. I'm like, hey, this is your reading for the next 2 weeks. And he's like, I finished it yesterday.
Come on, it's like if he finds something that he has a genuine passion or interest in, he will dive into it wholeheartedly. He will put everything into it, no matter what it is. And I love that about him. I think it's a great personality trait.
But he doesn't have as creative of a mind.
He doesn't. Yeah, he's kind of like me.
Yeah, he wants to know the information and the facts.
And why I need to know it. Why is it important that I know this? Okay. If you explain that to me in a way that makes sense, okay, I got you.
Yep.
I'm on board.
So they're all totally different. They all have different reading curriculum. They all have different math curriculum. I use 3 different math curriculums for 3 very different kids. Yeah. Nevaeh's already graduated and she had a different curriculum. And so it's very important that you don't have this huge entity dictating for all these different cultures and all these different states and all these different counties we need to make this much more localized. And I don't think there's anything wrong with localizing education. I think it's going to help tremendously. And so as a teacher, I think the Department of Education should be chopped and lit on fire.
Adios. Okay. As always, this is just our personal opinion. So once again, I'm fully anticipating that there are going to be a lot of you out there who are watching this and hearing this who are going to disagree with us vehemently, and that's perfectly fine.
That's totally fine.
As always, the point we wanted to make in coming on here is that, you know what, we all have our own outlooks and opinions on these issues based on our own personal experiences in the world. I'm not saying that I'm wrong. I'm not saying that you're right. Although if we're going to argue the issue and I'm on one side and you're on the other, I will say and argue that, hey, I am wrong or I am right and you are wrong. So take it with a grain of salt. Take it for what it is. We had a lot of discussion amongst ourselves this week about just some of the reaction whenever we do anything that's political, and kind of like I made mention before of like, hey, it turns a lot of people off. So be it. This is what it is that we wanted to come on here and talk about. On a given day. Will it be this always? No.
No, we've got different stuff going on in different times. We just kind of wanted to address some of the questions and accusations, and but we had a lot of questions, and I don't want to ignore those or pretend like we're dodging issues.
Yeah.
Like,
speaking of, we also had another guy, I think it was on Facebook, and if you want to get like really into like these discussions that we're having, join our. You can join our Instagram page, right? And then Facebook as well, because there's a lot more back and forth that seems to happen for whatever reason on those pages.
The fighting that occurred on our Facebook page today was, or I mean this week was really like.
If I don't check it for a few hours and I go back on there, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's out of control.
Because now people are fighting with one another. Yeah. There's a lot of that.
And again, it's not our intention.
No, that's not what we're trying to do at all. We were literally just like, the podcast is up and
what I was going to say was there was one guy on there who was like, hey, I'm glad to see that you guys aren't deleting comments anymore, because I hop on here before and you just deleted and like cleansed all the comments. Never have we ever gone onto any of our pages, whether it be YouTube, Facebook. I don't do the Instagram, but we don't delete comments for the sake of deleting comments. If you are rude toward anyone, us, our kids, you start name calling, you start doing anything. I don't care if we agree on an issue. Anytime there's anything like that, you run the risk of having your comment either deleted or having your account blocked. We try to keep things as positive as possible, which sounds crazy because if you read through the thread, there's a lot of negativity that's happening, but it is what it is. We try to let people express themselves, but please do so in a respectful manner, regardless of whether it's directed at us or somebody else who's just actively participating in the discussion.
And please leave our kids out of it. Now, Nevaeh is an adult and she has chosen to participate in the comments. So Nevaeh is very much like us. Yeah. We raised a very strong-headed, independent woman, and she's going to be branching out into more of this stuff. It's something that she's very passionate about and that she's learning about and she's diving into, and I'm proud of her for that. I think that it's great. She's got very thick skin and she's very brave, and she's going to speak truth regardless of the repercussions. So, I mean, she's an adult. There's been comments like, this can't be the real Nevaeh. Nevaeh would never say this. And I'm like, you don't know Nevaeh. That girl's got a mind.
Very, very, you think we're impassioned, let's say? Nevaeh is extremely impassioned.
Yeah. And she's going to be doing she's got a fun year ahead of her. She's going to be doing some fun stuff. That's not a
result. See, like I take offense to the insinuation that all of that stems from the fact that we've like instilled this in her. Like maybe in part for sure, because she was homeschooled and she is our daughter and this is our family.
And we talk about this stuff.
She thinks for herself. She stands up for herself.
She does.
And Nevaeh and I don't, ask Melissa, Nevaeh and I don't always agree. If there's anybody in our family who argues more than anybody else, it would be Nevaeh and I. So
Nevaeh has learned the power of debate by debating you since she could speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like she just blindly listens to everything that we say.
No.
She has.
Even on political issues, there are times where she and I go back and forth and like we don't always agree. So it's her. It's not us. Maybe in part, but not entirely us, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, for sure. That's pretty good.
Let's shut her down, Mama.
All right.
Go Eagles. You can do this.
The game already happened, Jeremy.
No. Come on.
It's the Chiefs.
Come on.
It was the Chiefs.
Saquon.
I already know.
All right. As always, love and appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here once again. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. God bless you all. We will see you next week.